everybody in football was saddened by the news that came through yesterday that Everton chairman Bill Kenwright had passed away at the age of 78. Everton meant so much to Bill Kenwright. And Bill Kenwright meant so much to so many Evertonians. I would regularly see Bill at games. When I was at an Everton game, Bill would be there and we would talk. And I've spent a lot of my time with Bill Kenwright. I'm delighted to say, in the time that I've been down here in England, he always afforded me time and afforded me access and was terrific to me. So, extremely sad news that Bill had passed at the age of 78. He would regularly attend away matches with a long-term partner, Jenny Seagrove, former actress, of course. We're going to hear from Jenny very shortly. Jenny spoke to me just before we came on air this morning. We're going to hear from others as well. Former Everton player David Weir, former assistant manager to Roberto Martinez, Graeme Jones. We're going to hear from England under-21s former Everton player himself, Lee Carsley. But Simon, you would have had many dealings, I'm sure, with Bill.
I did,
and
yeah.
Like me, I'm quite sure you got to know him very well. In fact, you would know him better than me, Simon. Yeah. How would you sum up Bill Kenwright's Everton legacy?
I think there's a lot of things that Bill did for Everton that were unrewarded and uncherished at times. I think his commitment to Everton was unequivocal. As a person, I knew him on as you know, Bill sent me a text on the 28th of August talking about his particular situation and his relationship with me and the challenges that he had in front of him. So I was very saddened to see the news yesterday. I did business with him. I sold him Andrew Johnson, and he made me laugh over that particular equation. I did business with him in the theatre industry because I had theatre productions that myself and Bill were doing together. I was incredibly fond of him, and I felt, and I don't want to dwell on that, I felt towards the end of the last year or so, I felt that there's some Everton fans that may want to have a look at some of the things that were said about Bill and to Bill. But I think more importantly, I think if you look at the legacy of his time at Everton, if you look at the decisions that he made on the whole, with the exception of the last few years with Mashiri, which I think was a very difficult relationship and people didn't understand the nature of that relationship. And I can remember talking to Bill about it earlier on in the year and saying, how have you let this situation develop with Mashiri and what's going on at Everton? He said, well, you try telling a billionaire what to do. You try telling him that the best manager is this manager and walking in a room and finding Rafa Benitez sitting across the table from you. And you're gobsmacked that even the consideration would be there. I think he was a very decent, a very charismatic, very creative, very interesting, very engaging man. But one thing he was, despite certain people's observation, was unequivocally committed, inextricably indexed to Everton Football Club.
Yeah. From start to finish, top to bottom. Danny, I mean, you played for the Red side, of course, but you'd have your dealings.
Yep.
You'd have many a conversation with Bill, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, I was very fortunate to be in his company on more than one occasion. First time I actually met him was at an airport not long after I'd not signed for Everton, when they tried to sign me when I was leaving Liverpool. And he come straight over to me and I was thinking, oh no, what's he going to say? And he said, you'd have looked great in the blue of Everton, you'd have done brilliantly for us. And I just was really at ease really quickly because of his warmth, because of his humour. And every time I saw him since, on many occasions going back there to play with different teams, and I actually also met his wife. I went down to her, I don't know if she still got the horse sanctuary. I went down there a few years ago because Bill had asked me to go down. And so, yeah, I found him such good company, always warm, always complimentary, even though we had the rivalry. And I was amazed also, I have to say, at his knowledge of me and what I was up to. It's not just this love for Everton. He loved football.
Yes.
He although he had the theatre world, and all that going on, and he's a businessman and entrepreneur in all these different ways, he loved football. And he always shared a moment to chat. And I really liked him. It's a weird one because when you grow up at Liverpool and then you have the rivalry of Everton, it's kind of like, well, anyone on their side is the enemy, if you like, and there's the hostility. But not with Bill. Not with Bill. That wasn't the way it was. And it's been great to see, even on social, how many Liverpool lads I know who knew Bill, who've posted nice things about him, because they had the same...
Exactly. Yes.
So, yeah, wonderful guy. And I agree wholeheartedly with Simon. I think it was disgusting, some of the things that happened towards Bill and during the end, because I didn't blame him for any of it.
No.
He was in a corner, and he's done so much for that football club.
Well, that's right, Danny. And for those who don't know, in the last 6 months to a year, Bill Kenwright had not been attending matches, had not been taking his seat at Goodison. Such was the feeling of a section of the Everton support that it might not be the best idea. Yeah, of course, not far from all of them, but it might not be the best idea for Bill to be going, along with Mashiri and others. Such was the mood inside the stadium and outside around those times. Dominic King in the Mail recalled a phone conversation last January after Everton had lost at home to Brighton. The fans had turned bitter towards Bill. And Bill apparently said to Dominic before we started to speak, Dominic said before we started to speak, I had one question for him. Why on earth are you carrying on? To which Bill replied, because, son, you couldn't imagine what it'd be like if I didn't. I mean, longevity in the boardroom, Simon, how hard is it to achieve?
Well, you see it all the time. I mean, the challenges are long live the king. The king is dead, long live the king. Abramovich goes out the door, the next guy comes in, and people recall certain aspects of Abramovich's ownership in a certain way. You look at further down the pyramid. You look at the guy at Accrington Stanley that's been there for a while, and he's saying, "I'm exhausted. I've had enough now. I'm handing this football club over to other people." Longevity in the boardroom is based upon. If you're trying to achieve a popularity contest as a football club owner, you're not going to achieve it on most instances. And there's two kinds of people, I suppose, in life. There's popular people and there's successful people, and it's amazing how popular you become when you're successful. And that's the difficulty in football, that you will never maintain a consistent theme of success. And there will always be this emotive-driven section of a fan base that, irrespective of what you do, will have a different view to the one that you have. And I think ultimately, if you're doing things in the right way, most of the time, for the right reasons, you'll get the right outcome. And there'll always be people that dissent. And I've told you stories about me walking in a football club that was in disarray after 2 years in administration, and the first thing I read on the social media post was, thank God Jordan's here, but we'll wait a little bit of time before we hammer him. And some people's mentality is that. Yeah. And that's what football brings out in people. But you can't have it both ways, Jim. You can't have all the emotion that fuels a football, that gives people such reward and recognition and credibility, without the other side of it, because you have to price both in. I do think it was sad that the last 6 months of his time at Everton were something that he was excluded from. And you saw images of him coming out of the away game against West Ham, where certain fans were haranguing him. You saw, as much as I'm in very little contact with Palace, I heard of the stuff that was going on when they played Crystal Palace away in a game where they were not particularly great and stuff like that. But most importantly, I knew Bill from the theatre world. One of my best friends, Nick Moran, was in the stage play Blood Brothers, which Bill produced and was a brilliant production. Yeah, and he was just he was a charismatic, interesting, flamboyant, decent, committed man. Yeah. And I think that's the way that people should want to remember him. And in football terms, those commodities are often far fewer in between than you would hope and imagine that they are. I spoke to Bill quite a lot more than I would have said on this show. And Bill sent me a text, as I said to you, at the end of August, which is a very private text. I'm not going to read that one, but I'm going to read a text that Bill sent to me in the height of all the furore that was going on with the dissatisfaction of Everton fans. And I don't think it's inappropriate to read it, because I want people to understand his thinking about it. He says, "Thank you, Simon. I know you've been very supportive, and I was very grateful. I did send you a text last week. There are two reasons why I can't talk right now, and I'll explain later if you have time. It's a horrible, hideous situation, and whether I can or should find a personal way through, I don't know. But all that matters is the club, which means the supporters, and I have to try and sort it for that reason. And I'll call you next week." And that, to me, that was in the height of it, when they were not going to the stadium, they were being vilified, and everybody that was involved with a certain section of what people perceive with a board that hadn't done their job. That was Bill's thinking, that the most important thing was the football club and the supporters. And I think some people that were on the receiving end of the supporters' abuse would have priced everything out in regards to supporters. But his sentiment was, the most important thing are the supporters. I think that says a lot about what Bill Kenwright stood for.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.